Well, a very good afternoon and welcome to Falun, the home of cross-country skiing in Sweden for the 2015 World Nordic Championships. Cross-country skiing, Nordic combined and ski jumping coming your way over the next 10-11 days. Mike Dixon and David Goldstrom, your commentators throughout the meet, are in situ, ready to go. And we've got just an opportunity to have a look at some of the features here in Falun. Of course, home to 3 previous World Championships. Well, the city of Falun, some 220 kilometers northwest of Stockholm, the capital of Dalarna County here. Falun, originally famous for its copper mines, now an important service and industrial city in 2001.
Kommer cirka 200 000 till och fyller på här på stan, så att jag tror
Here's one of the Swedish fans saying they're expecting 200,000 people to flood into the town here in Falun. There's a lot of expectation in the air, and Falun certainly is going to be put on the map.
Backhoppning tycker vi är coolt i alla fall.
Ja, man har inte fått sett det på så länge här, så det ska bli kul.
The girl likes the ski jumping. It's something they haven't seen for a while. They're going to enjoy the occasion. Well, the organisation and all the volunteers have done everything they can do. And no need to tell you who the locals will be supporting. Anyone in a white, blue and yellow suit from Sweden. Well, the scenes are fantastic. Slightly overcast today for the qualifying races for the endurance cross-country events for both men and women. And they've been set target times to achieve just to get into those big races later on in the week. And the scene is set. The women going first, and the distance of their race, 5 kilometers. We'll take a quick break and then we'll be back with some action. Well, welcome back to Falun, waiting for the start of these Nordic World Championships. We've got the classic sprint tomorrow and the women's qualifying for the ski jump. Today, it's all about qualifying for the cross-country. The women racing over 5, the men going over 10 in the freestyle technique. Now, one man who was an absolute hero in Sweden, Per Elofsson, who you may well remember from as far back as 2002, racing in the Olympic Games. And he certainly is going to be an interesting man to talk to throughout these championships. His career ending much earlier than it needed to, but he's still one of the biggest names that Sweden have ever produced, alongside, I guess, Gunde Svan and Vasberg and Morgren. The list goes on and on. Well, these are the start names for the qualifying today. And many of them names and nations that you don't normally associate with cross-country skiing. They've been given a target number of FIS points to achieve either that, or if there are more than 10 that qualify, just the top 10 going through to the competition, the medal competition for real later in the week. Well, here are the scenes, still waiting for more spectators to flood in, as they've already sold 160,000 tickets, and they know they're going to sell more as the week goes on, once the championships get underway. A rehearsal for a lot of people today, particularly the press. Let's have a chat with Per Elofsson. Here he is with Robert, saying, welcome to Falun. The Swedes have been waiting for this for a long time now. Per Elofsson saying, absolutely, it's going to be a fantastic championships. I think it'll be amazing for the fans. So many people here in Sweden looking forward to this, and of course our neighbours Norway sending a mass of people across to support. A lot of people expected to be here. Robert saying they've sold 160,000 tickets, and the stands should be full once the medal competition start.
Ja, absolut. Inte bara här inne i staden, utan även
yeah, I think so,
under hela banan kommer det vara proppfullt.
Probably full of people on the course as well. There's going to be a massive amount of support for the Swedes. Per, you know this, there've been a lot of championships that you've competed in, but not so many on home soil. How are the Swedish skiers going to feel?
Självklart kommer det vara ett otroligt stöd de kommer att ha här på hemmaplan.
Well, they're going to have a massive amount of support. That is obvious. It's a special occasion for them, but with that comes a certain amount of pressure, and hopefully they can start well and then ride the pressure as the week goes on. So, Robert's saying we've got a lot to look forward to. We start off with the qualifiers and then the medal races tomorrow. And it's that classic sprint, which is the first event.
Ja, det tycker jag också ganska bra också att det startar med de tävlingarna. Lite
So
mer
yeah, it's
action,
good to
lite
get
mer
some
fart.
action right away and hopefully get some Swedish medals to get us off to a good start. Well, everyone looking forward to this once again, says Robert. Welcome to Falun. Enjoy the championships. Well, here's an aerial shot of the stadium, rebuilt, revamped, and the course is, of course, redesigned, famously difficult on the World Cup circuit. This is a venue that we visit at the end of every cross-country season for a mini tour. The tracks are different, but they're no easier. As you can see, that big climb out of the stadium and then back down into the exchange area. That's the 5-kilometre loop for the women today. You need a very powerful start. You've got to have a decent warm-up if you're going to compete on these sort of tracks. And actually the finish relatively easy on this short 5k. It gets a lot harder for the men's 10. Of course, they've got double the climbing to do. Well, nice to see that a few spectators have turned out for today's event. And people have come from far and wide to complete here. Mexico, Brazil, India, Ireland, and the four laufers just getting out on the tracks, as is fairly standard in the World Cup.
I love you.
That's one of the Kyrgyzstan athletes just preparing. Suits that you won't have seen on the World Cup, faces that you won't have seen on the World Cup. But this is a big day for all these qualifiers, fighting to get into the top 10, and then they've got to make sure that they get the right number of FIS points. 45 in the women's event today. Word is from Mike Dixon that the tracks are in good condition, but a little bit lumpy. They haven't really pressed them down as they will be doing later on in the week. They're trying to conserve the tracks for as long as possible, and huge expense gone to lay down artificial snow as a base to make sure, whatever the weather, these races could get underway. Well, the average age of the spectators will tumble as the week goes on. I think they're expecting big crowds for the ski jumping, especially after the World Cup action in Vikersund last weekend, where the world record was beaten over 250 metres. What is it now? 251.5. Fanamel flying his way into glory there in Vikersund. But what a competition they had at the same time. We won't see distances like that off the Falun jump, but it's been redesigned, and everyone looking forward to seeing who is the king of the hill this time round. Cross country, though, still very much the top sport here. The Swedes will not feature in the ski jumping, but they have every chance of taking medals. Maybe in the first event tomorrow, the medal event, the sprint classic style. That's going to be interesting, and certainly Östersund last weekend indicating that the Norwegians are going to be very, very strong. As you can see, there's a certain amount of natural snow around, but the base on all the tracks is artificial. A little bit of wind in the background, that won't really make any difference. A lot of the tracks around here in Falun are protected by the woodland. It's just the only really open area is the stadium itself, but it's quite a long approach into the stadium, and it's well designed. We also always see some fantastic finishes here. So crunch time has just about to arrive. That section on the left is where the spectators will amass, certainly for the sprints tomorrow. Looks like an interesting course for the classic sprint. The trick is to design a course where double polling isn't possible, so all the athletes go in the classic style. rather than just taking a pair of skating skis and double poling your way round. Well, while we wait for the start, and hopefully an interview with Merlin Pisset, who's one of the Brazilian athletes out here at the World Championships. Just a rundown on the events. Obviously today is all about qualification for the cross country. Tomorrow is about qualification for the women's ski jumpers. Another world title up for grabs for them. Interesting to see whether Takahashi can make up for the mistakes she made in the Olympics last time round. The classic sprinters I've mentioned on Thursday. Friday, the Nordic combiners see their first action, the individual event for them, and the women's ski jumping medal competition. That will be fantastic. Friday afternoon. And then the men's qualification takes place, trying to get it down to the top 50. Saturday, we see the skiathlon for both the men and the women. The skiathlon, incidentally, is a race that involves both the classic and the freestyle. Does it produce the most all-round competitor? Perhaps not necessarily, because the classic phase, which goes first, tends to be a little bit of a procession, a tactical race. And then on Sunday, we'll have the men's normal hill ski jumping and the team sprint, which is a relatively new event in cross-country terms. Two men in each team for that team sprint, and the Swedes have done exceptionally well in the past. Of course, the Swedes winning the men's sprint back in 2011, taking glory, a little bit of gold away from Norway. Are the Norwegians going to get their revenge this time round? Well, I think it's time to throw to our commentators, who are now in position, ready to go for the start of the race, due off in just a couple of minutes' time. David Goldstrom and Mike Dixon in the commentary box. Enjoy the races, the long championships ahead, but this, of course, an insight into some of the minor nations.
Thanks very much, Patrick, and good afternoon and welcome to Eurosport's coverage of the Falun Nordic Ski World Championships for 2015. Alongside myself, Mike Dixon, and looking forward to what is something like a world race, because so many of the athletes in this women's race coming right up in a couple of minutes' time are athletes from literally almost all the continents around the world. And their job today is to try and finish in one of the top 10 places. There are 45 in the women's competition from 18 nations, and if they qualify, if they finish in the top 10, then they will be allowed to start next week in the women's 10 pursuit. If they do very well, Mike Dixon will explain to you what the bonus is for them if, for example, they get the feast points that they are looking for.
Well, it is a big day, David, as you said, from all these athletes from all around the world. And let's be honest, there's a mixed standard here. The standard overall is quite a percentage lower than the best we will be seeing, but a huge day for some of those who don't have any World Cup points coming into this. And this race is about them proving themselves and getting noticed, as you say, in the top 10 to enable them, hopefully, to race in all the distance races here.
So almost set to go here in Sweden, in Falun. Mike Dixon alongside myself, David Goldstrom, for two qualifying races which relate to next week's competitions. The women's 5K today, the opportunity to join the women's 10K freestyle next week. The men's, which will be later, over 15 kilometers next week. Today, the qualification over 10 kilometers in freestyle skating, and the objective for the men will be again to finish in the top 10. This is a wonderful little stadium. They've revamped it. A year ago, the finish was on the other side, to your right as you look at the pictures there, and it's almost a mini Holmenkollen. because you come swooping down that little hill that you can see there, and then you rise up over a bridge, as you do in Holmenkollen, and then swing into the finish straight. And the only thing that's missing from absolutely replicating Oslo is the little roller over the pedestrian bridge. But standing by, ready to go in the gate there, we can see Doina Kravchenko representing Moldova. Now, it was on our list Markaleta Stefan who was due to start, but unless there's an equipment problem, no methods or information have been passed on to us, and away she goes on her 5-kilometer journey. So it's skating. The temperature here is almost +3, and here's Mike with his thoughts on what is a demanding course for these women who have to try to qualify.
Thanks, David. It is really a demanding course. Been round it 45 minutes ago, and really from the stadium here, it's continual climbing up to about 1.6 kilometre, and it's certainly the biggest climb from stadium that we've seen this season.
Just 15 years of age, Martina Bilinaite of Lithuania to get underway, and actually a good number of spectators here. As you might imagine, this is not a medal competition, this is a qualification day, but already an indication of those hundreds of thousands of tickets that have been sold for 2-week festival. And now Ciobanu, this is another of the Moldovans. And she was actually involved in the World Championships at Val di Fiemme in 2013. Finished just outside the top 40, so didn't qualify. So we'll try to be doing better than that on this occasion. That's Regina Bertotti for Italy. Really important, despite the fact that it's quite warm, Mike, to actually make sure that the warm-up is really thorough here.
It is. The warm-up track just about 800 metres from their start line, and I know most of the athletes were up there just getting their final warm-up because the track closes, and you certainly need to have taken your heartbeat, taken your body up to its maximum, as most of these athletes were doing some 10-15 minutes ago.
So moving on out there, this is Alina Lukyanova from Kyrgyzstan.
Most of these athletes, David, very young athletes. Well, you mentioned 15-year-olds, 17. We've got 7 16-year-olds. So they're just getting the experience here.
And we've also got a 45-year-old. So we've got the whole age range as they go out. And the stadium here is perhaps one of the most compact I've ever seen. And therefore it really encourages the spectators to really get out and around the track, particularly on Murdabak and the really hard hill that is going to become a major feature of these championships, as it does in all World Cup races here.
Well, and that is one aspect of this course, curvy, turny, to allow spectators everywhere. I can compare it to 29, 30 years ago when I raced cross country here. We just went out into the woods, got lost out in the woods, and came back into the stadium twice. Now it's all about the stadium, and I love the feel of this theatre, and well, lots of dreams will be achieved here too.
This is Victoria Shaikmedova of Kyrgyzstan, 30 years of age, and she's going to be followed by her 16-year-old teammate. As she pushes out this on the early signs, there is going to be a long journey. It's just one loop of 5,009 metres to be precise.
Well, and David, with respect, I think this, as you say, a tough journey. Marit Bjørgen would probably take 11 minutes 45. I think some of the athletes today will take certainly twice that time, over 22 minutes, maybe up to 29 minutes.
Abdi Kadirova for Kyrgyzstan, and you can see that much more fluent and energetic as she goes out. You need to make a pretty strong start here.
And for the 16-year-old, David, that's one of the better starts we've seen. In fact, she'll soon pick up 30 seconds off the athlete ahead of her.
But we're getting very close to the start of one athlete who I think is going to have an impression on the overall result list, and I've made her one of my favorites for the day, and it's the next starter, Tanja Karisic, representing Bosnia-Herzegovina, who actually has recently done the double in a Balkan Cup competition in Serbia, and that was over the past weekend. She won both races over today's distance, and that bodes pretty well. She's 23 years of age, and she sadly, I think because we're going to go for a break, she's number 12, but I'm sure we'll catch up with her out on. So queuing up here to get underway. This is not a cold day, and another of the Hungarians.
Sheen from Brazil. It's not your first World Championship in cross country.
No, it's my fourth World Champion.
So you're not looking for experience, you're looking for success.
Yes, in true, we try to develop the sport, so we think that if he has more participating, then it's better. Practice and try to get experience and try to teach something for the new athletes. And the participation, of course, is good being a world championship with the flag of our country.
Especially you don't really have snow in Brazil. Is it okay for you to be in the deep white snow?
Yes, in Brazil it's impossible, never snow. We need to travel to Chile and Argentina to go to skiing. But we have some experience in snow, and it's more easy to us now.
Do you have a personal expectation on your result for the race?
I would like very much to try to go to the main race, 10K, but I think it will be hard to qualify.
Well, up the first time check, which is announcing we've got a little advance call on this to 1.3 kilometers, and certainly Karasic of Bosnia-Herzegovina making the early start, 3:45.1, and she's the first and fastest up the initial climb.
Well, the athletes, David, that you mentioned, there's a long queue waiting to start, and when it comes to tomorrow's race, of course it's straight line racing, but the individual trials, I think we'll see the athletes holding back before they line up. You need to keep the body moving, you need to keep the muscles moving, ready for an explosive start.
Just saw one of the Kyrgyzstan athletes, and that was number 8, and that was Shaikh Medova going off the course. That was the elderly one of the two athletes from that country. As away for Brazil, Merlin Pichin, who you just heard from. She's actually won an FIS race in her time, and she won a 5-kilometer race back in 2010. So clearly has a measure of ability, and all we can do is wish her well as we see one of the early starters, in fact the first starter, coming up to 2.8 kilometers, but the indications are that this time that she's going to set is going to be quickly usurped.
I think it is. This is one of the easier parts in the course, gentle incline before you turn to the right, and it is a chance for some recovery at 2.8 kilometers before we get back up into the hills again.
So we think that number 8, that was the 30-year-old Kyrgyzstan athlete who was double poling quite slowly out of the start, has actually called it a day, but we don't know for what reason.
And I did see, David, in the warm-up a number of athletes on some of these technical parts falling, and at the time all the sprint racers for tomorrow were out practicing, and there was a bit of a roadblock, to be honest. So I think we will see a couple of falls on this course. Well, it's a good rhythm from Kravchenko. Just a good weighting through the lead side, skate 1 as it's called, or paddling the Norwegians call it.
And on a day like this, Mike, I mean, obviously throughout the next 10 days or so, we're going to have a variety of conditions. So choosing the right ski and choosing the right wax is really important, isn't it? Because if you get the ski right and the wax wrong, or the wax right and the ski wrong, you can have a really long, painful journey.
Very much so, and you know, the expense that teams are putting into getting that formula, as you've just described, absolutely right. They're spending, well, hundreds of thousands of euros to try and get the right answers. And today, a lot of these athletes don't have that backup. The major companies have been preparing their skis, and they only have 1 or 2 pairs of skis.
They do, but if you go to the Swedish truck, it's a revelation. There are no less than 13 workstations inside the giant wagon, and 13 guys, and they are split between the specialists for grip and the specialists for glide. And of the skis that they're carrying in the truck, they're carrying 680 pairs of racing skis plus 50 skis for testing. And the Norwegians will be pretty similar, and the Russians won't be far behind.
That's right, the three, and lots of other teams. There's a Swiss truck here as well, many German truck, many teams trying to get in on that. It's like having a giant ski bag, but it's a truck to hold 700 pairs of skis, and it makes life easier. You can prepare the skis better. As I say, these athletes that we're seeing today, they'll have 1 or 2 pairs of skis only, and it's very hard to compete against the big nations with the financial backing.
And of course, these tracks take some preparing. They've got 4 rat tracks who go out and groom the course. They generally go out at 10 o'clock at night, and interestingly enough, they're being managed by the great Thomas Wassberg, and if you aren't familiar with him, well, he was 3 times a world champion and 4 Olympic gold medals, 15 kilometers in 1980 and the 50 in Sarajevo in 1984, and he won in 1987 the 30-kilometer race in that year. So tremendous man, looking after the tracks to make sure that the condition for the athletes is absolutely spot on.
He's an amazing guy, as you said, all these titles, and in Östersund, not last week, but for the biathlon, he was out shoveling snow, so he really does work for all sports here.
Here's one of my standout athletes, and this is Karisic, Tanja Karisic, 23 years of age, representing Bosnia-Herzegovina, and the double winner, won on consecutive days 2 Balkan Cup races last weekend. She's been at the World Championships in Liberec. She went to the Olympics in Whistler, and you can see here coming up to set a new target time. And this is quite a big bite out of Blagoeva's time.
This is looking very good for Karisic, and I think this is going to be, as you said, you pointed her out as one of your favourites. Surely she will make the top 10 with this kind of performance. And look at the way she's, the athletes before her, they haven't worked over the crest of that hill, they haven't carried their speed around the bend, but she showed us exactly how it should be done.
And here's the birthday girl who Karisic has overtaken, and this is Kaluna from Mongolia, 20 years of age today, so hopefully this will be a positive experience for her. She's been in the Universiade this season in Srpski Pleso, and competed in the 15-kilometer mass start and the 5-kilometer classic. She was tended to be late 40s or early 50s in the placings there, so not by any means a poor performance. And she also had the joy of going to the Olympic Games in Sochi last year when she raced in the 10-kilometer classic. So she's had some big race experience, and going to the Universiade would have helped her preparation for these championships.
Oh, without a doubt. And that was at altitude, David. We're barely above sea level here, 160 metres, 125 metres I think the start line is, and that does help you when you've recently been up to 1800 as she has.
This is our first starter, because we still don't know what happened to Markaleta Stefan from Tonga, who was supposed to be coming to us. And there you can see this sort of similarity. Unfortunately, those stands on the left of this young woman are not so full today, but they will be, I'm sure, absolutely tomorrow for the individual classic sprints. And this is the replica of Holman Collin, just the roller at the top of the straight there. That's the only real difference. But it's very compact. It'll be very noisy and very loud.
It will. And sorry, so it's sub 17 minutes there, David. 16:56. I think we're going to see that beaten by 2 minutes, possibly more.
Hungarian here, and you can see that Karasic there, 9:54.3 running time, and really making good progress. Still a number to come. The actual coaches out on the course there will be using Karasic's splits as a barometer for all the later starters.
Yeah, certainly setting the early pace. You can see the speed on the right hand side of the picture. It's a very accurate speed of what they're travelling, with the transponders just above their boot. 32 k's an hour, 35 almost on this little descent.
And this will be a crucial corner, as will the rise up to the bridge that they cross when it comes to the finish of these races, because track position is going to be really important. And as this young woman comes down here, the season's athletes will be trying to see which of the tracks or which side of the track is perhaps a little quicker than the other side. Bulgaria, Blagoeva. Best ever result was in a skiathlon for her. Again, a Balkan Cup competition of some 3 seasons ago. She was top 10 there, and takes the lead there by almost, as you can see, 40 seconds. So, as you would expect, these times are now beginning to get a little faster.
Yeah, and Bulgaria, traditionally, and certainly in biathlon terms, we did have Bulgarian women winning World Cups late 80s, early 90s, and of course Olympic gold medal in 1998 in biathlon.
Well, this is going to be the time to beat here, and you can see the fluency much better, really putting the zest in, knowing that to get into the top 10, she's got to put absolutely everything in if she wants to race next week in the medal race. And coming in best part of 2 minutes ahead of Blagoeva, and I've got a feeling, Mike, that that's going to be good enough to give her a top 10. What is going to be interesting is to see the number of feast points that she is awarded as a result of this race, because if she was to get, if I'm right, Mike, 140 points, then she would be able to start the other distance races.
As far as I'm aware, that is the case, but she needs those 140, and that entitles her to start in each of the rest of the races, and including the longest race for the women, the 30-kilometre.
So even if you get into the top 10, you're qualified for the 10k freestyle next week, but not for the other distance races unless you get 140 points.
That is my understanding of what they have to achieve to date to be eligible for the distance races. And it's a big deal. They put a lot of skiing, a lifetime into this, to try and make this top 10, to try and make it into each of the races here. This is although a minute behind for the Hungarian. It's skiing well, the rhythm's good, the compression through the lead side is good.
Just want to highlight a racer that seems to be very much in touch with the target. This is 23-year-old Latvian. This is Inga Pashkovska, who was 4th this season in the national championships. As you see, Kaliunia of Mongolia going into 3rd place. And just coming back to Pashkovska, she was she actually ran the race in 15 minutes 21, which isn't a bad time, and that was in the national championship 5-kilometre race.
Number 22 there, David, started so fast, but dropping back a little as soon as she's got into the major climbs.
13 just coming home here. This is the young woman who was in the Norwegian Nationals, who finished 10 minutes behind Teresa Johaug.
If I'm right, she was last though in the Norwegian Championships in the 10 kilometre. Well, skating's all about balance and trying to keep it, all the moves as efficient as possible. And slight raise there in each of the legs as it kicks off. Using energy and almost 2 minutes behind Kasic.
So Karasic. So Karasic still the leader in the clubhouse. .23.1 is the time to beat. This 18-year-old, couple of decent results in the Universiade this season, and finishing with enough energy here and looking to try and take second place away from the Greek racer, does so comfortably.
I think, David, that's going to be good enough by the end of the day to make it into the top 10. Really aggressive finish, as you said, and good pace throughout the whole course.
Ildikó Pák representing Hungary, one of the more experienced racers, and I think you can see that by the way that she's moving there.
She did race in Val de Fiemme 2 years ago, 83rd in the 10 kilometre free, which is good, but 8 minutes behind the lead time on that day.
This is Tanja Karasic. I think she can feel pretty confident, and she seems confident, doesn't she, that she's done enough to be in the medal race next weekend.
It's all about trying to increase your pace over the top of these descents, and we've seen some get up to 36 kilometers an hour down this little section.
And this is the woman who was actually 9 minutes and 33 seconds behind Charlotte Kalla in the Scandinavian Cup race over 10 kilometers here in freestyle, which was a sort of dress rehearsal here for the Swedes.
That was mid-January, wasn't it?
Paszkowska going pretty well here, 35, so she's the woman on the right of your screen there, and you can see they're in 4th place, but every chance of qualifying. And you can see the woman who wears 34, who started literally 30 seconds ahead of her as yet another of the Hungarians come through here. Hungarian still coming to the line here, not much energy left there. You can see the shoulders rocking from side to side, and almost glides across the line there into 3rd place.
Well, you can't give much more than that for sure. So she, at the end of the day, she has to be satisfied that she gave everything in this 5 kilometers.
Klauser, another of the Latvians. Now this is one of the senior members of today's competition here, 45 years young, 8th in the national championships this season over 5 kilometers, did 16:19 in that particular competition.
Klauser looked to be going very well, a lot of aggression over that rise. She'll carry good speed down the next descent, and this is very good from China. Could be the new time, David, up to 2.8 kilometers.
Yeah, Chi, who actually was racing in the World Cup in Lillehammer in the early part of the season over 5 kilometers. She's just 17 years of age, and this is really encouraging. For so many seasons we've been looking for Chinese athletes to come through, and she really is probably the most dynamic that we've seen.
That's really good, and you can see the speed. She could maybe have pushed a little more around that bend, but the attack up that incline at 17-year-old, all the technical side is very good and in place. This is a good time as well, and I think this will be a qualifying time under 1 minute behind.
So at the moment, Karasik and then Pap. So everybody out on the course, everybody started now. And 32, this is Kiroska, also going pretty well, the national champion of Macedonia for this season over 5 kilometers freestyle. And Kiroska, you can see here, just not going to get that second place, but is going to be third. And that looks to me as if that will be good enough as well to go through to next week's race, Mike.
I think it will, without a doubt. 55 seconds deficit. Still, it's a 14:23 winning time. I think Chai is going to take, some 30 seconds off that. So we're looking at around sub 14 minutes.
Casey Wright representing Australia, although a lot of her racing is done in the United States on the World Tour over there. And therefore she's got plenty of competition from the American women's team, which is a strong team. Still Karasik waiting there. She'll want the win, but it's going to be hard to get because of the speed of Chi. Paszkowska, I also had her very much in line for a top 10 place.
This is aggressive, David, and look, carrying good speed. I know it's the end of her race, so she can give everything.
But 20, 23, 30 kilometers coming down there, and as you say, perhaps not the best of cornering, but nonetheless.
I was just about to say, as these events go on, the Marit Bjørgen and the gang will be completely 20 centimeters away from these bollards, taking the tightest line around the corners. It's quite interesting how we'll see the changes.
And is she going to get second? Yes, she is. But Karasik still prevailing. You want to be on the podium here. Posey Musgrave was 2 years ago, the sister of Andy Musgrave, who produced a really good warm-up performance over the weekend in Östersund in the men's free. Finished in 15th place, but there was a clear indication that there's more to come.
I think so, and 15th in a World Cup is brilliant. You're in the bracket there where you can make a top 10, you can make a top 5. It is that close, and there was somewhat 14-15 second gap between first and second, so well and truly in the race.
And the reason that we have these qualification races is essentially because they have to really eliminate the racers who are not sufficiently proficient because they used to be involved, and it caused a few problems with the top racers when they all started to get into overtaking situations, or as you say, somebody falling on a downhill and actually blocking someone or causing another problem. But here's Chi coming home to set the new target, and what a good target this is going to be as she comes home here. And Karasik will have to make way out of the chair, because
now that is a great time, David. I thought maybe 30 seconds deficit, but it's 49.3. She picked the pace up in the second part of the race.
13:33.8. That is a decent time. Yeah, and just also, as you're looking at Chi, just to say that Muznice from Latvia, Anda Muznice, who was a really good roller skier at a height, who finished third in the national championship, she's gone into third place. 13:33 for Chi, 14:23 for Karasik, and Muznice 14:43. So a minute separating the first three. Pashkovska of Latvia in fourth place at the moment, and not too many to come home now, so the top 10 is looking pretty solid here. She gets her moment in the chair, and after just looking at Pap in there in fifth place for Hungary, Kiroska for Macedonia, Klauser for Latvia. Latvia, good performance here. And in 10th place at the moment, Pavlova, 15:56.
Looks like Agnes Simon just outside. She's in 11th place, 2 seconds. All she needed to find to make the top 10, but 11th position, sadly.
2:32, 2 minutes 32, separating the top 10. And 43 coming home. This is Casey Wright for Australia.
This is looking good. Surely this is a qualifier with just, what, some 50 metres to go.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the moment for the woman that's after her, Katya Galstian from Armenia, 22-year-old, who was just running outside the top 10. I wonder whether she's going to find anything on the run for home to squeeze her in. Now, if she wants to get inside the top 10, she's got to be inside 15:43 or inside 2:09 in terms of a deficit. This is Trnka, who was the last to start for Australia.
She needs to keep the pace on, David, but I think this is a top 10, so two Australians looking good to make the cut-off. Last starter.
Casey Wright, of course, into third place now. Was involved in the Universiade this season, this young woman, and she produced in the 5K Classic, 14:43 was her running time, so goes into fourth place.
Well, I thought fourth place it is by 0.2 of a second.
And there's Galishtan. Oh, Galishtan into 10th place.
Whoa.
So she was overtaken by the Australian, but she's, she must be surely the last person out on the course, because she was the penultimate starter. So I think that's going to qualify her.
Good effort, 10th place. So what was the time? 1:49 back to 10th place.
So just speed it up, but the honours go to Chi, who wins the race by 49 seconds decisively. Karasik in second place, and Casey Wright of Australia in third. So China, and then Bosnia-Herzegovina and Australia. And further down the course there, you can see if you're 11th and below, I'm afraid you do not qualify for any of the other distance races, not the 10-kilometre next week, although you could enter into the sprint tomorrow.
Well, that's the qualifying for the sprint, isn't it? So earlier in the day, it's the run out, the 1.4 kilometre run out. Get your time. If you make the top 30, you're through to well, not the finals, you're through to the knockouts.
So there are your winners, and excellent performance by Chi of China. Well, I have to say, Mike, they come in all forms of physique and stature, and you can see that Chi is certainly not the tallest of the trio there, but I think really very interesting to see how she gets on next week.
I think so, and of course she did race in Ruka, the first World Cup, but that was in classic style. She came 76th there, which was a decent performance for a 17-year-old, but I think she's a much improved skier now, 3 months later. This looks very good skating, and maybe not competitive for the top, but certainly a potential for halfway up the field.
Well, in Lillehammer, which was after Ruka, there was a 5-kilometer freestyle race. She did a 15:03 there, so I think she's well prepared and deserves the win that she's given herself today. So still to come, the men's qualification. Again, the rules are the same, only the top 10, but a much bigger field. We're going to take our leave for a while, but do join us if you can. 2:45 Central European time to see the men's qualifying competition. For the moment, though, from Mike Dixon and myself, David Goldstrom, bye-bye from Falun.